That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I'm not sure if you've seen the story referring to this story about Bernard Dranville now. I don't know. Is this getting desperate, saying that the only Canadian citizens should vote in the leadership race? Have you seen this?
Listen, this is another day in the life of Crazy Town, right?
Uh-huh.
No, I mean, you're quite right to a certain extent. When I first saw this story, I thought, well, I think they're trying to create a situation where they'll have an excuse for explaining why they got whipped, okay? And for those of our listeners who are just joining us, yesterday Bernard Dranville turns around and goes like, there's something not normal when a party leadership race is open to anybody who's in Quebec and is over 16. I mean, this is not normal. This membership in the Coalition Avenir Québec should be limited to Canadian citizens, residents of Quebec, blah 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 blah. And the rationale behind this, and this was echoed today by Jean-Paul Julien, one of the cabinet ministers who supports Dranville's candidacy for the leadership. Mm-hmm. Saying, what's going to happen? You're going to have all these instant, caquistes, immigrants who are going to sign up and try to save the PEQ program, which of course has become front and center of the issue for the entire leadership campaign. And they'll stack the deck, and that'll be it. And the thing is, and this is what I love. I mean, we've known this about the CAQ for years. They say anything that comes into their heads. Right? They'll say something and then maybe later they'll check it out. The fact is, the CAQ's rules of membership are extremely normal. They are the same. In fact, they're slightly more rigid than those of Québec Solidaire and the Parti Québécois, which basically says you have to be over 16. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen. You don't have to be a resident of Quebec. You just have to be over 16 years old to be a member. Because why? Because we're not talking about an instrument of government. When you look at a political party, you're essentially talking about a private club, which is why expenses for a party are always kept separate from those of operations of the National Assembly, because it's got nothing to do with the public purse. And in fact, the toughest, and this is where you call the irony police, the toughest membership rules are with the Quebec Liberals, who basically say, yeah, you know what, you have to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. And they tightened that up, I think, maybe 2-3 years ago. But all that said, just another layer of chaos to brush over the increasingly nonsensical leadership race for the CAQ. And I got to tell you, I heard the report this afternoon where you've got a CAQ MNA saying, columnists should be limited in what they write, because one of them turned around and basically said, this government is chaotic. They should just prorogue. They should just shut down until at least the leadership thing is done. But that's not going to happen. And this chaos, Aaron, just keeps becoming more intense. So as weird as this story is, as silly as this story sounds, guess what? That is our government in action. That is, quite frankly, our tax dollars at work, because these guys are eating up oxygen talking about a leadership race on company time. You want to have, honestly, it's becoming a little distracting when you figure there's a little more to do here in Quebec than wonder about how to position yourself for the leadership race, okay? And now we're seeing that coming up front and center, and we're seeing, like, we need a reminder, just how absolutely ephemeral, how fringe the CAQ has always been in terms of its interest, in terms of its priorities for Quebec. So I wish I could say that, oh, no, don't worry, cooler heads will prevail. There are no cooler heads left, Aaron. Get used to it.
That's the sad part. I just wonder, by the way, did you happen to hear or read, I guess it was a Gazette piece as well, the heated, I don't want to use the word rivalry, but debate, if you will, between Joe Ortona and Simon Jolin Barrette?
Oh, yeah, but
wow,
you know what?
This
is no, it's good, but it's really big, but this is it, right? And you know what's so funny is here's Joe Ortona, you're doing the whole thing about the Quebec Nation. Remember the last time he pulled that, our good friend Denny Coderre bounced him off of his ticket in the municipal election quicker than you can say throw you under a bus. Okay, I mean, I think story broke in the morning, and he was gone in the afternoon. And the fact is, what he said, for those of you who are just joining us, folks, what Mr. O'Torno said was, just because you say you're a nation doesn't make you a nation, which I don't think is an incredibly controversial statement. But once again, with the cocktail weenie skinned separatists who make up the bulk of the rank and file and the leadership of the Coalition Avenir Québec, and not just them, but also the PQ, when you dare say anything that is contrary to their presumption, their presumed truths, you are Quebec bashing. And once again, this was another example of it.
I just thought, I had him on earlier in the show, and I think we're going to play that back tomorrow. But you know what? I just give him props for actually standing up there and saying what he has to say. Because it certainly seemed to me in reading the piece that Simon Jolnette was basically just trying to bait him from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely, because they know they've got nothing left. They know they're done. Yeah. And this ridiculous so-called Quebec Constitution, which it doesn't matter who winds up running the province in October, that thing is going to go through the shredder very, very quickly. But all that said, let's waste more time, Aaron, with a completely fool's errand that nobody except the CAQ and perhaps certain elements of the PQ have an interest in.
So I want to talk about this other story, and I think we have Leslie Roberts on the show tomorrow afternoon. The city's announcement, getting rid of cones in downtown Montreal to set up an AI lab. What do you think of this?
On the one hand, I should be, this is, I'm getting a little scared. Because I got to tell you, I did not have the beleaguered downtown of Montreal being transformed into some kind of, Yucca Flats testing ground for AI programs, which may or may not work. I mean, can you imagine the poor business owners who have put up with so much over the past couple of decades being told, hey, congratulations, you're going to be part of our noble experiment. We're not entirely sure if it's going to work, but hey, it's all we got. So, and I don't doubt.
Well, but wait, but Jim, with all due respect, it can't be worse than it is right now down there for some of these merchants, right?
But you know how many people just yelled at their radios listening to you say that, my friend? It's like really, it can get worse. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, listen, I hope you're right. I hope this is going to be the turnaround. But somehow, I have a bad feeling about this one, Sarge, okay? And I think down the road, you and I are going to be talking about how they discovered that, the programming wasn't quite right, and maybe it wasn't a good idea to reduce the number of stories on every building on St. Catherine Street to 2. You know what I mean? Because the AI said, no, two stories is high enough for St. Catherine Street. So we'll see. I mean, I may be exaggerating a tad, but all that said, Aaron, like I say, I'm a little nervous about this.
Ye of little faith, James Mennie.
I've watched too many science fiction films to believe that noble experiments always go right.
I would just remind you, and I saw that poor guy who owns that pizza shop, I think it was on Stanley, right?
God, yeah.
And what he has to go through just to be able to stay in business. And I think clearly the city is responding to that. Whether this is the right way to do it or not, I guess we'll find out. But at least it's something, and I take something to mean better than absolutely nothing, which is kind of what we were left with when the last administration headed out.
But, blame the last administration, blame the one before that. But I got to tell you, do we need AI to have coherent planning? Because I've been hearing that since Gérald Tremblay was mayor of Montreal. We've got to do something. We have to coordinate. We have to organize. For crying out loud, you're in charge. How difficult is it for you to take a bunch of humans who are making very, very good salaries, who enjoy very, very good pension plans, and say, listen, sit down, give me a plan yesterday, and make it work, as opposed to kicking this down the road year after year and decade after decade? Because, my friend, you and I have been having this conversation since this show began. And this show began 14 years ago.
I'm just kind of sad that we never got that heated sidewalk and dome on St. Catherine Street that Daniel Coderre had promised. Remember that?
Yeah, well, apparently the patent holder is now in talks with Donald Trump to defend the United States.
There you go. By the way, I would want to just bring up one thing here with respect to the other thing we heard from the city yesterday, the idea that, and they promised us, I remember Soraya talking about this, right? Cutting 1,000 jobs in 4 years. The first 250 are on the chopping block.
It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out because remember, I mean, I'm sure, first of all, ain't nobody going to get fired. It's going to be attrition. That's fine, okay? But these guys are, and I'm not, like, I've got a union card in my pocket. These guys are unionized up the yin-yang.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Aaron, if it turns around and says, okay, well, we have fewer people, so you have to do A, B, and C. If that's not in the job description, if that's not in the collective agreement, you may have some trouble down the road. So listen, best of luck. It clearly, and she's admitting that, we kind of overhired here at Montreal City Hall. And everyone, I don't think anyone would dispute that, but the problem is turning that ship around takes a lot of elbow grease, a lot of patience, and a lot of political support.
You're right. But I wonder, Jim, if this has been going on, this idea, and we've talked about this before, beyond just city councillors and so many of them representing a city this size, the number of workers in the city, which kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. Does that mean now, and given the fact that, yes, there are unions there, you're right, they're up the yin-yang, right, that we just have to live with this forever? There's nothing we can do?
No, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do. There is something we can do, but when you disturb that status quo, it's not going to be easy.
Well, no, expect a fight. Sure.
We're going to feel it. The unions will push back in some manner, and it's not going to be a cakewalk, okay? But it's overdue. It is the proverbial Band-Aid that has to be ripped off, so you may as well start now. If only because Montreal is running out of money, okay? I mean, this is we're a basket case at this point. And unless something is done, you are going to see actual, genuine reduction in fundamental services because we simply don't have the wherewithal because we've been so busy playing with every kind of performative program as opposed to just doing your stupid nuts and bolts job that we're paying that price now. And we have this ridiculous bureaucracy, which is just like I say, and don't forget, even when it's attrition, Aaron, it's still going to take time.
Yeah, but at least do we give the administration props for starting this?
I'll give them props for starting it. I'm not worried. Listen, I got a lot less problems with that than I do with the noble experiment that's about to take place in downtown Montreal.
Well, we'll find out more about that tomorrow. I just wanted. By the way, I found that interesting. The union already pushing back right over those first 250 job cuts. And did you read the line? The line was, this is only going to save $16 million.
I know.
Out of a $7 billion, as if that's not real money somehow.
I know, but listen, at the city of Montreal, that's chump change.
Yeah, true. But you know what? You start small, right?
Okay.
Start with the tip money first. James Mennie. Jim, thank you.
Matt.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.